My name is Herb Perez, Olympic Gold Medalist in Taekwondo. I wandered into a martial arts school because I was a young kid in New York City, and my parents moved me to a place where it was difficult or challenging to live, and kids were always kind of picking on me. So I needed self-defense. And I had read this book about Taekwondo where the guy was really strong and good and could protect himself. So by nature, I picked Taekwondo. Growing up in New York, I was the son of a Puerto Rican farmer. My father only graduated sixth grade before he had to work on the farm. And my mother was the daughter of immigrant Polish people, and her father passed away. So she had to stop the 10th grade, and she worked in the building as a superintendent to help her family make money for her four brothers and her mother, who was still around. So the person I was before, I was the child of both of them, and I really didn't have a roadmap for success. My father was abusive, so my mom left my dad when I was 6 years old, Christmas Eve. And so Taekwondo provided me with structure so that I could learn. It provided me with structure so I could protect myself, but more importantly, it provided me probably with a father figure that I didn't have. My first few years of training, I think the most important thing I remembered was my instructor was a man of character. When he said yes, it was yes. When he said no, it was no. And I saw him being respected just for who he was, not for how much money he had or anything else, but the kind of person he was. So I wanted to be like him. So the first thing that changed for me is I had a unwavering sense of justice. Justice mattered to me, and it was based in a large part upon my instructor and the things that he valued. That it's an interesting journey trying to become anything in life, but I had always challenged myself. I first wanted to be an astronaut, so I would do these kind of fake astronaut tests trying to do that. Um, so when I came to Taekwondo, the thing that helped me in Taekwondo was there was a path, there was a pathway, and the thing that kept me going is I realized I was kind of good at it, and I had always wanted to go to the Olympic Games. I had watched the Olympic opening ceremony, and I saw the Americans walking with the flag when I was like 4 or 5 or 6. And so I decided I wanted to be that person too. So one of the things was my goal of becoming an Olympian in something. And then the second thing were the visible effects I saw in my life. I was doing better in school. I was able to protect myself. I was able to travel and train. So it never occurred to me to give up. My losses have always defined me more than my wins. I had a lot of wins, and I was joking with my son about that. I said, I've lost, but I've won a whole lot more, which in our sport just happens. When you lose, you're done. When you win, you keep fighting. The loss that affected me the most was in 1988, after being world champion, after being the first person to beat Korea, after being on the cover of magazines as the guy who's going to win the Olympic gold medal. I lost a tie match to somebody I had beaten 4, 5 times and knocked out before. So I had to reconcile that with myself. I had to decide whether I was going to wait 4 more years. I was 28 years old. I had wanted to go to law school. And so I had to decide whether I was willing to commit 4 more years to try to become the person I wanted to become and win an Olympic gold medal. That was a devastating loss for me, but it taught me something about perseverance, determination, and patience, and resolve. So I was resolved not to let that happen to me again. So for the next 4 years, I didn't lose matches, any match. And when I went to the Olympic Games, I had a vision in my mind that I could win, but that was shaped by the loss. Had I won in '88, I might have gone to the Olympics and maybe taken a bronze medal in Seoul. But that journey then put me in a place where I was ready, mature enough, and had enough experience to become an Olympic gold medalist. Taekwondo has always been part of my identity, but I don't think it's the thing that I consider. I've never considered myself a Taekwondo athlete. I'm certainly defined as that. I follow the Platonic method of success from the Republic. I was a successful musician before I was a successful Taekwondo player. I was an academic before that. I went on to become mayor of my city, spent 9 years on the city council, and I was a musician. So I wanted to be good in many things. So while Taekwondo is one part of my life, it's not the thing that defines me as a person. If I were to define myself as a person, first, I'm a father, a husband, a family man, and then maybe a Taekwondo grandmaster and an Olympic gold medalist. Going into 1992 after the 1988 challenge, I found myself understanding this was my last day. This would be the last time that I went to a national championship, an Olympic trials, an Olympic Games. Be the last time I was U.S. team captain. Be the last time that I fought in front of that many people. So I decided at that moment to have fun. The outcome would be what the outcome was, but I was going to enjoy every minute of my time in Spain. So I would train as hard as I could. I'd get coffee on my way to practice. After practice, I'd watch videotapes. I'd go walk around Barcelona, saw Gaudi's art, went out to dinners, and trained the next day. So I took the attitude of work as hard as I could, but enjoy as hard as I could. And that freedom to fail allowed me to succeed. After winning the Olympic gold medal, I found myself in a place where I was starting law school. I literally got off the plane from Barcelona. I was offered to be on a television show, some movies, model for Ford agency, some really weird, strange things. Fight in the first Ultimate Fighting Championship. I got a phone call to do that. But I had committed to myself and to my mom before she passed away in 1991 that I would finish college, go to law school, and do all these things. So while I was enjoying my Olympic success, I was sponsored by a company. I did end up on TV for a few years. I was focused on my academic career and then deciding what I would do with my future. So my life was always goal oriented but process focused. I think that athletes today suffer from a couple of challenges, and I think in part it's TikTok and social media where they look at other people's life and they have the fear of missing out, or they think other people are doing better. So I think there are a lot of athletes that look at that and wonder if they should take this pathway. I'm fortunate in that the athletes that I have around me, Taekwondo doesn't have a professional pathway. My son does soccer and his friends do other sports, and their pathway is to get into a good school, D1 school or D3 school, and get an education. So I think that smart athletes prepare for the future. They understand that their athletic career is very short, but their lifetime career will be very long. So most of the athletes I know choose sport as a way to refine themselves, become better, and maybe as a pathway to help them get into college, but very few of them choose it as the only pathway. So I'm in a very fortunate place. I'm a ninth degree black belt and Olympic gold medalist, Pan Am and world champion. I'm the only person in the entire world with those accomplishments. Only one. No one, not Korean, American, no one in the world but me. So the question is, what kind of responsibility do I have to give back to the sport, and then comment on it? Most recently, there's been changes that I implemented many years ago about scoring and multi-tiered scoring. And then there was an implementation of electronic scoring systems because there was so much cheating that they couldn't stop cheating. They just couldn't, for a sport that honors honesty, they couldn't find referees that couldn't cheat. So they put electronic scoring, and it ruined the sport. So it's taken the sport and dumbed it down. It's not beautiful anymore. It doesn't work. The scoring doesn't work. It doesn't discern techniques. So as a pioneer in the sport, as a leader, and as a role model for many, I find myself in the uncomfortable position of having to criticize my sport and criticize the people running it currently, because I've exited from, I had leadership roles in the World Federation, the National Federation, the U.S. Olympic Committee, the Olympic Council of Asia. So I still consult for the Olympic Council of Asia, but the rest I don't. So I could sit by the side and watch it and not comment, but I choose to comment. So those changes have diminished the sport, and as part of my leadership role, I comment on that frequently in hopes that it will circle around to get to something that matters again. When you're an athlete, I was having this conversation today with my son, but when you're an athlete, you have to be selfish. And it's not a bad word. It means you have to be self-centered and focused on you and what you need. If there are people around you or activities that you shouldn't do, you have to be able to divorce yourself from them, not participate in them. My son's friends went away to Mexico, Cancun or something, and he would have liked to have gone. I won't mention any names, but he couldn't go. He understood that he had to stay home and train with his team. So I always took that pathway of understanding that you had to sacrifice first and be selfish. And it may mean you may not have a girlfriend. I had girlfriends, but that I was able to manage both. But I never let anything get between me and my way. After that, when I decided to help others and open a school, I decided it was time for me to be less selfish, use my ability, my knowledge, my intellect, my experience to help others. So I've always been giving of my knowledge and created programs that would help many people rather than just one or two or a few hundred. I try to help thousands of people by allowing that information to go out. And this is different than most martial artists. Most martial artists feel it's a secret. They keep it secret. You can't teach others. You shouldn't. My instructor, who was like that, in fact, didn't take me when I first went. He told me my journey would be different. He said, "You're not destined to teach one or two people. You're destined to teach many." So I've always followed that advice. Taekwondo has shaped the very person I am from the moment I started it till every day, even concluding today, I change. And as I said before, it taught me the perseverance, the need to not give up no matter what obstacles you face, find a way to overcome them. Be determined, set your mind to a goal and set that goal. And then finally be patient because it takes time. These days, I use that in my life when I'm raising my children, when I'm managing my business, especially through COVID and the challenges that we had as a business. And then finally, there's an understanding that everything is temporal and it's impermanent, meaning that today you may be facing these challenges, but if you're just patient, you won't. And by the way, if you're having a great day, just wait, you'll have a bad day. So you have to have this understanding. And that in part came through my practice of Taekwondo. And then the biggest journey for me now is when I started Taekwondo, I wanted to be a better person. When you're competing, it's hard because you're competing. So by the nature of competition, you're trying to vanquish somebody else. You're trying to take something. You're trying to stop them from taking what you have. And then I realized that I was keeping that mentality in business, in life, in every action. I'm driving my car. I can't let somebody pass me. I'm eating food. I can't let somebody finish their food before me. So I realized finally, just recently, I had stopped competing 30 years ago. It was time to let that part of myself go. And so now I'm focused more on the betterment of myself as an individual. So that today I use my Taekwondo to be a better person, to find those attributes of me that I think need to be improved, to be less competitive in the things that don't necessitate competition.